exist in all areas of city living, in housing, in employment, in places of public accommodation, and out on the street. Those protections reside in what are called civil laws. The remedies in a civil legal system are very different from the remedies you would get if you are looking at hate crime related situations in the criminal legal situation, which my colleagues are going to address in a little bit. In the civil legal system, the remedies that somebody might get for discrimination or harassment type complaints really range from things like damages, so it could be money damages, if there are emotional distress damages, back pay, front pay, other types of money damages, injunctive relief, meaning telling an entity or a person to stop the discrimination, to change a discriminatory policy or practice, things of that nature. And also our agency engages quite a bit in what we think of and look at as restorative or transformative type relief. So situations in which we think rather than looking at monetary or other forms of damage, we're looking at how we can, how after what has happened, there could be more reinvestment into the community. In addition to types of damages that are that could be awarded at our agency, we also have the ability to award to levy civil penalties up to $250,000 per discriminatory act. So that comes in the form more of a fine that basically goes to the general coffers of New York City. And that's really in situations where we want to deter future similar acts of discrimination or harassment. And we want to deter that type of behavior from a specific entity or person, or we want to deter such activity in the general public. Those are kind of the specific types of remedies that are available in the civil legal system that we have jurisdiction over. There are over 26 categories of protection that we have under the city human rights law. So things like age, gender, national origin, race, religion, disability. Those are examples of some of our categories of protection. And our law is meant to be covering folks in New York City very broadly. Actually written into our law is the mandate that our laws be construed and interpreted broadly to provide maximum possible relief. So for many of these reasons, that is also why we tell people if they have experienced discrimination or harassment, if they are the victim of a bias incident, whether or not something may constitute a hate crime, it may still constitute a violation of our city human rights law because our human rights law is very broad, and the standard for constituting a violation of our law is basically if somebody is treated less well based on one of the categories of protection that we have under our law. We are a staff that speak over 30 languages, so we feel very strongly about making sure that we can connect with folks in the languages they are most comfortable in, with the understanding, of course, that after somebody has experienced discrimination or harassment, that it's oftentimes much easier to communicate in a language that somebody feels much more comfortable with. And we have several folks in our Community Relations Bureau, which is really the outreach arm of our agency, that are focusing on different types of communities and are meant to directly liaise in those communities. So for instance, Flora Fern, who's also here today, Flora's going to wave for folks who can see her. She is our East Asian communities liaison and works very closely with those communities. And we have additional folks in our agency who do that as well. For folks who want to file claims at our agency, folks can call 311, ask for human rights. They can also call us directly at 718-722-3131. They'll be connected with us directly. And because there's been an increase in discrimination and harassment claims, coinciding with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have also in the last 2 weeks established a COVID-19 response unit to really expedite those types of complaints that come in. Because in many situations, we're finding that the relief people need is immediate, especially if it's housing related, or something of that nature. So we have a response unit that has 24 people from across our agency, both in the Law Enforcement Bureau as well as the Community Relations Bureau. And they are really tasked with making sure that we are taking a look at any of these complaints that come in. People should get a call back within 12 to 48 hours of contacting our agency so that we can expedite any of these matters. In the last, just to give people a sense of what I mean by an uptick, in the last 3 months, there's been about 284 reports of discrimination and harassment that have come into our agency that are related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And of that, about 40% of those complaints that have come in have included some form of anti-Asian discrimination or harassment. So that also significantly has our attention, and we have a lot of kind of outreach resources directed at trying to get people the information they need on how to report, how to get to us, and what filing looks like. I'll also direct folks to our website because we have a lot of information on our website on what the complaint filing process looks like, what some of the expectations are after somebody calls us, and how that process follows. And there's also a lot of information on our website with regards to outreach information in different languages, including videos in Tagalog, Korean, Fujianese, Mandarin, and Cantonese. So if folks are not, usually if they're not getting their information from digital media, there's also videos that folks can send to people that are captioned as well as spoken in the language in those 5 languages that I've mentioned. I'm going to stop there because I know other people want to hear from the other offices, but really today I know that the purpose is for folks to really understand what are the differences and what are the expectations if you're filing a civil complaint of discrimination and harassment at our agency versus if you're seeking to have something handled as a hate crime by NYPD and the DA's offices in the criminal legal system. So thanks again to everyone for joining us today.
Thank you so very much, Commissioner. Next, who we're going to hear from is from the Office for the Mayor's Office for the Prevention of Hate Crimes, Executive Director Deborah Lauder.
Hi, thank you, Frank. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep. Oh, you're muted again.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Okay, there we are. So hi, everybody. I want to thank the Commissioner Malayalis and the whole CCHR team for putting this incredible forum together. The Office for the Prevention of Hate Crime was opened last September. Last year was a year in which crime was going down in New York City, but unfortunately hate crimes were seeing an increase. And City Council and the Mayor felt strongly that we needed to find ways to address it. So our office opened up. We are not part of NYPD. There's always some misunderstanding. NYPD has a hate crime task force that's an investigative body on hate crimes. Ours is a preventative look. And what we're tasked with doing is bringing together, coordinating all the different city agencies that are stakeholders in the fight against hate. So we have been convening 17 city agencies. So the City Commission on Human Rights, the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, Department of Education, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, all these different agencies, plus the 5 district attorney offices, a number of which are represented on this call today, to all look at with a very intentional focus of what can we do to prevent hate. So how do you do that, right? There's not one way to prevent hate. What we do is we look at a comprehensive approach from law enforcement, from community relations to education, right? And we develop resources. We have developed fact sheets that are now translated in 16 languages that explain what the difference is between bias incidents and hate crimes and how to report them. We just did a really wonderful education guide along with the Department of Education that's been sent out system-wide. It's resources on the history of discrimination against the Asian community in this country, and curricular resources to teach kids, not to hate, to have empathy and to engage with the other. So we're quite worried that after this pandemic leaves, we're still going to be addressing those issues in a very deep way, probably more escalated than we've ever had to. And we're very much committed to working with the community to address it. The other program that we oversee it's called the Hate Violence Prevention Initiative. This was an initiative by City Council to award discretionary grants to community-based organizations who do work at the grassroots level with the communities on these issues. And so we've been convening them, overseeing their work to ensure there's more what we call upstander trainings, to ensure that they are working with their communities who may not have the trust relationship with law enforcement to report hate crimes and to get them educated about the necessity to do it. There is a lot of misunderstanding about what hate crimes are and are not. And, there has to be an underlying crime, and the victim has to be selected in whole or substantial part because of bias against various categories. And Commissioner Malayalis mentioned some in the context of civil rights law, but they're very similar. Ethnicity, national origin, race, religion, sexual identity, gender identity. So a lot of these characteristics. And the reason we have these laws is that these crimes impact the victim in a very different way. So when I can tell you that since March 10th, there have been reported 14 different hate crimes, it seems like a low number, but the impact on those individuals and on their communities, those who share the characteristics of those individuals, intensely feel the pain of those crimes. And so the city is totally committed. We're, I think, the only one in the country to do a comprehensive look in this way, agency-wide. And during this current crisis, we're very concerned about the increase in the COVID-related targeting the Asian community. And we're here to support you, which is why we've been doing these town halls and are committed to providing the resources that you all tell us are necessary and that we know will help stem the long-term impact of this. So that's my opening, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Next, we have from the New York City Police Department, Chief of the Detectives, Chief Harrison. Chief Harrison?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yes. Chief Harrison?
Yeah, good afternoon. How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
Michael Bruckner. So if I could just real quickly just talk about what we're seeing with the coronavirus hate crimes, and we'll just go from the day the pandemic hit, which was the beginning of March. We've had 13 incidents with 14 victims. Out of those 13 incidents, we have 9 arrests attached to those incidents. Now, I'm just going to dig a little bit deeper into what we're seeing. We've had 1 incident, 2 victims in the confines of the A4 precinct in transit. Illegal. We've also had 1 perpetrator committing 2 hate crimes to the same victim in the eastern part of Harlem in the 2-3 precinct on March 7th and March 13th. We've also had a incident in the confines of the 4th precinct in the Bronx where a female agent, 61 years of age, 4 teenagers. We made 3 arrests to that incident. There are 4 cases that are still open. We had 1 on March 25th with the 2 people assaulted in the confines of the A4. The problem there is the victims are reluctant to come forward, so we have been unable to talk to them. We had an incident in Midtown South on a train, and once again, that victim is making the investigation a little bit harder because they're not coming forward. We had an incident on April 21st inside of a Rite Aid drugstore in the confines of the 2-4 precinct. We're still seeking information of that perpetrator. And the last incident happened on April 26th where an individual went to our victim, picked over her shopping cart, smacked her cell phone on the ground, and threatened her with some type of statement saying that she's the reason for the coronavirus to be here in this country. So just to give you some statistical data, we've had 7 female victims and 7 male victims. Our perpetrators range from that male Hispanic, 13 years old, that the incident occurred in a 2-3 precinct. We've had a male black, 16 years old. We've had a female white, 37 years of age. And we've also had 4 female black teenagers. So unfortunately, the perpetrators are across the board. Regarding the crimes that have happened throughout the city, we've had 7 incidents in Manhattan, 3 in Brooklyn, 2 in Queens, and 1 in the Bronx. The only borough that didn't have any hate crime incidents is Staten Island. Out of the 13 incidents, 4 of them did happen on transit. We've had 2 precincts that have had 2 incidents. The 112 precinct had 2 incidents, where one of them we have an arrest on, and the other one is in the 2-3 precinct, where I stated before earlier, the male 13 years old who was assaulted or harassed, that same victim was placed under arrest. So what have we done so far in the police department? We put up many several social media posts that discuss how we prioritize the investigation into hate crimes. We've had several executives from the NYPD that have done interviews with Asian news outlets, including myself. I did one yesterday with Sino Vision interviews, where I was interviewing next. Several questions regarding how we proceed with our investigation. I'm going to have Mark Molinari talk real quickly, but he's done several interviews with different news outlets, newspaper outlets, as well as media interviews. We're also having many conference calls with the many different Asian leaders to discuss some of the concerns that we see and the demands and the needs for people to come forward, and the concerns about, or the questions about immigration status, which is something that we do not ask any victim throughout the city. Mark?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Chief. Just a little background on the NYPD Hate Crime Task Force. I know I've been on a conference call with a lot of the people on the call. The NYPD Hate Crime Task Force this New Year is going to celebrate its 40th anniversary. 40 years ago, the NYPD created a unit to investigate bias crime within the NYPD. As of now, we're the largest unit in the country, and we're one of very few that handles only hate crimes. The whole purpose of the office is just to investigate those crimes committed by bias motivation. In the unit, we are a reactive investigative unit. Post-incident, after something happens, we are called in to investigate and hopefully apprehend, arrest, and then bring somebody to a prosecution. But on my level of the unit, it's also to do outreach. As you know, I've been on this call, these calls many times. We've worked with our federal partners in the FBI, the Department of Justice, the New York State Police, New Jersey State Police, as well as many city agencies, the DA's offices, the Office of Prevention of Hate Crime, and our own NYPD units, such as the rest of the Detective Bureau, the Community Affairs Bureau, Crime Prevention Division, in trying to get the message out there on what we're doing and what we're all about. The biggest thing I could push in this message is we need reporting. We absolutely need victims of hate crimes, witnesses of hate crimes to come forward and report and assist in a prosecution. We do not, in the NYPD, ever ask a victim or a witness anything about immigration status. Immigration status documentation will not play into the investigation at all. We need somebody to come forward. More of a humanitarian issue that we need people to come forward to hopefully solve their hate crime, what happens to them. But we need the perpetrator on the radar to stop them from committing, identify them if they've committed past hate crimes. As the chief mentioned, the person, one of the first ones reported was in Uptown Manhattan, a 13-year-old male committed 2 crimes 3 days apart. The first incident was not reported to us, but we possibly could have stopped him from committing his second crime with time reporting. We encourage anybody who's a victim or a witness to come forward and help. In addition, anybody who has video surveillance on their business, house of worship, or residence, if we ask you for assistance in obtaining that video, please help us out. Many of our cases are solved, or at least the prosecution is enhanced with the use of video of the act happening.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Chief Harrison, and also Deputy Inspector Molinari. Next, we're going to hear from the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. We have Chief Kelly Muse.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. All right. Thanks again for having me. This is a wonderful forum, as obviously shown by the fact that there's 1,000 people already on the call within a few minutes. So I just want to say thank you. My name is Kelly Muse. I am the chief of the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office's Hate Crimes Bureau. We were established towards the last quarter of 2018. And the reason for our bureau being in existence at this time is because there was an uptick in hate crimes at the latter part of 2018. So on December 11th of 2018, the Brooklyn District Attorney, Eric Gonzalez, created this bureau with independent resources, ADAs who, assistant district attorneys who are specifically assigned to investigate and prosecute hate crimes. So what is a hate crime? Were you not able to hear me?
Is this Michael?
Yeah.
Hello? I'm hearing people talk, so can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Sorry about that.
Okay. So what is a hate crime? A hate crime is certain crimes that are laid out in our statute, in our penal law. So it could be anything from an assault to criminal mischief. It could be even something, as serious as murder or robbery. Certain types of crimes where the perpetrator intentionally chooses the person or selects the person who they perpetrate the crime against because of that person's race, ethnicity, color, ancestry, national origin, their gender, their sexual orientation, their religion or their religious practice, and also because of their, if a person has a disability, so that would be someone who has a life-altering disability. Think about someone who's missing a limb, someone who's blind, someone who's deaf, or age, and that would be someone who's 60 years of age or older. So if someone intentionally targets a group, in a person in any one of those groups, specifically because of those factors, then we can prove it's a hate crime if we can also show that the motivating factor behind them committing the crime was committed in whole or substantial part because of that person belonging to a particular group. So with that being said, it's very important for us to understand what the motivation is when we are determining what is and what isn't a hate crime. And so the way that works in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office is we work very closely with Mark Molinari, who you just heard. The Hate Crimes Task Force, they do a great job of informing us about crimes that take place. And so what ends up happening is if a crime is committed in, let's say, the 70th precinct, then those local police officers will respond to the scene immediately, or just as they would after 911 is called. And once that officer gets to the scene, based on a really preliminary investigation, what they'll do is they'll contact a duty captain who will come to the scene, and the duty captain will determine whether or not, based on the factors that they understand them to be at that time, whether or not the Hate Crimes Task Force should get involved to enhance the case or to investigate the case. And what I mean by that is, if words were spoken, if certain factors go into play, like words, so if a person has tattoos, if they it's all these types of factors that they look at to determine whether or not we can in fact charge a hate crime. So then the Hate Crimes Task Force gets involved, and when they get involved, and they contact our bureau immediately, or as soon as practicable, and let us know that there's a possible hate crime that's taken place. And we work closely with them at that point in time to determine what steps should be taken next in terms of, looking for videos, speaking to certain witnesses, and things of that nature. And it's important to know that just because something isn't charged as a hate crime in the beginning, so let's say a person is charged with an assault and, the person's been beaten up pretty badly and they're injured. So we know it's an assault, but we don't know we haven't determined it's been that the assault was committed in whole or substantial part because of a hate crime or a bias for or against a particular group. That doesn't mean that we won't eventually charge a hate crime. So that's something that we always want to get across through our messaging, because we want people to know that we're always behind the scenes investigating and trying to determine, what actually took place. And we do that a lot through social media checks, through looking at the person's history, through, collecting the hate crimes task force. They'll collect video surveillance, and maybe we'll say, okay, this is sounding more and more like a hate crime. And sometimes there's the absence of motivation. Like, you don't really know why this happened. These two people are strangers, and someone came up to someone, and committed a really heinous act. Sometimes we have to really, really dig deeper into their personal lives or their histories to determine whether or not we can charge a hate crime. And once that is determined, we'll, depending on whether or not it's a hate crime or a felony or a misdemeanor, then what we do is we charge it accordingly. And if it's a felony, then we go into the grand jury. And that's at this point where we really need cooperation from the community, because we can't do it alone. We need everybody's help and participation in determining who are the best witnesses to contact. And unlike what the commissioner said earlier about, certain types of discrimination, it's important to know that we specifically deal with crimes, right? I remember I started in the beginning and saying that this is about crimes and criminal activity. So it's not necessarily just discrimination, although it may feel really bad or like it's, really poor behavior. It has to rise to the level of a crime. And a lot of times we have what we call aggravated harassment in the second degree in our penal law. So that's sort of a catch-all type of crime where like we'll say assault in the third degree as a hate crime, but aggravated harassment in the second degree, the type of crime that the hate crime is built in. And sometimes it's something as simple as gesturing towards someone in a threatening manner, or spitting on someone, and also using, offensive terms or racial slurs and things of that nature, or anti-religious statements. So we have a hate crimes hotline as well. If you're unable to report to the police for some strange reason, then you could always call our office, 718-250-4949, and we are available 24 hours a day. We're always working with the hate crimes task force. And the one thing about our office is that our assistant district attorneys will reach out to our victims as soon as we can. As soon as we know who the assigned detective is from the hate crimes task force, we're asking for the information so that we can contact the victims and let them know that we have victim services available to them. So even if, we don't know who the perpetrator is, it doesn't mean that you're forgotten about. We still want you to know that if there's counseling available, you will be able to obtain counseling or any other services that the office has to offer, or the assistant district attorney will reach out to other agencies to determine whether or not we can help you in another way. We do have external translators, and we also have translators within our office who speak multiple languages. So not getting a person on the phone in the beginning who doesn't speak who speaks a different language than you doesn't mean that you won't be able to be heard. We will do our best to get translators. And we've in Brooklyn, you heard from Chief Harrison, where we had 3 COVID-19 related hate crimes, 2 of which are currently on our desks, and we're doing all we can to investigate them further, or build them up, I should say, or enhance them. Right now, we're at a little bit of a standstill because of the fact that we're all home, working from home, but we're still working on our cases and getting our paperwork and things of that nature together. So I look forward to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Chief Muse. Next, from the Queens District Attorney's Office, we have Chief Brovner. Chief Brovner?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Not surprisingly, at the Queen's Gates office, we have a situation similar to in Brooklyn, as Kelly just described, and we also have a unit, a bureau that focuses on hate crimes. Just like in Brooklyn, as in all of the city, we evaluate crime as soon as it comes in. We work very, very closely with Mark Molinari and the other folks over at the Hate Crimes Task Force. We get notified as soon as there's a hate crime in our bureau, and when we do, we offer any assistance we can. We write subpoenas, we'll do search warrants, we'll do whatever we can to assist to make sure we're able to properly identify the defendant, as well as do anything else to help determine the nature of the crime and how to go forward with it. Just like Kelly said, we have to make the evaluation to determine whether the crime is a hate crime or not. We strongly encourage anyone to call 911 whenever they think they're a victim of a hate crime or might be a victim of a hate crime. A lot of times it's hard to know whether it's a hate crime or not, either when you're as a victim when you're experiencing it or not. So call, make sure the police come, and the sooner they're notified, the sooner we can get involved, as well as the easier it is to identify the defendant and make sure we can go forward like that. As Kelly said as well, it's important for us to go forward that there has to be an underlying crime. It can't just be that someone was rude or offensive or accidentally bumped into you while walking down the street. There has to be some sort of crime underlying it, an assault or a criminal mischief or threatening with a weapon or something along those lines, or spitting on you, something like that. And then we will go forward, and we have special assistants that handle these types of cases, so we have the ability to properly analyze the case and figure out what the charges should be. A lot of cases get elevated because of the extra element of the hate crime charge, and those with something that might normally be a misdemeanor can be elevated to a felony because of this extra element that we have to prove that it was motivated in whole or substantial part because of the nature of the victim, and that's why the victim was targeted, or that's why this particular act was committed. And we also have multiple different languages that are spoken in the office, and even if we don't have a particular language represented by someone in our office, we can use the hotline number or a language number so that we can get it translated. Additionally, we do have a hotline specifically for people that don't speak English. It's answered by someone who speaks Mandarin, but there are other languages that are available. The Immigrant Affairs hotline is 718-286-6690. That's for the Queens DA's office, 718-286-6690. So far, we've been pretty fortunate. We've had, there's one hate crime that there was an arrest made in Queens, and we're currently prosecuting that. And then there's another one that was just referenced from this past weekend, and we're looking into that, but we don't have anyone identified or arrested yet. And I think that covers most of the issues. At this point, I'm happy to answer any other questions, but Kelly did a really great job kind of breaking down the stuff, so I'm just kind of picking up the pieces.
Thank you so very much, Chief Brovner. Next, from the Bronx District Attorney's Office, we have Chief Gottlieb. Chief Gottlieb, are you there still? Hello, Chief Gottlieb, are you there still?
Hi, sorry. What I can tell you is that our office generally handle hate crimes the same way. I mean, when we're evaluating a hate crime, we have to determine, most importantly, is it motivated by hate? And once we make that evaluation, we will then charge a hate crime. And that's because it charges a hate crime, it elevates the sentencing guidelines. The way a case will come into our office, it can come in a number of ways. It can come in through Nypd, through Chief Molinari. We work very closely. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was on the phone with the hate crimes unit. they're on top of it. If you could take one thing away from what I say, and that is, please, if you are the victim of a hate crime, or if you know somebody who's a victim of a hate crime, you really need to report those crimes. The only way it's going to stop is if people actually report them. I do a lot of speaking throughout the Bronx, not too much to the Asian community, but to other communities. And one of the questions that come up all the time is that many immigrants are afraid to report it because of their immigration status. I can tell you that there's a law that says we cannot ask that question, cannot penalize you for that. It is not relevant to our consideration how to prosecute crime. So if I can say one other thing, NYPD's Hate Crimes Task Force is an amazing organization. They are experts in this, and that if you report it to them, they take it seriously. And within each of the district attorney's offices, we have ADAs that are specifically trained in handling these types of crimes. So if there is an arrest made by NYPD, the way it happens is they bring the case to us. It's flagged in our system, their system. There's a communication between the Hate Crimes Task Force and generally myself. We discuss the case. I call our complaint room and tell them that it's coming in and how it should be charged. And we work closely together on every one of these cases. And luckily for us in the Bronx, we do not have many hate crimes relative to other counties. So we don't have that many cases. We still individually and personally. We do have, as the way we handle a hate crime is we handle them as prosecution, but we also realize that service is very important. So we have a community outreach unit that handles reaching out to the community, public service speaking to communities. And a big part of that is we understand more than anything that the immigrant community, because of this year, is an underreported universe. And what we need to do, and I know there are a lot of community members on this call because we're going to get on personal, if I could take one thing, please, we need to encourage you to reach your community and make sure that they report, because that is the only way we can help you. It doesn't make any sense to suffer in silence. When you report the cases, if you do not speak English, we have pamphlets in various languages, including Chinese, Korean. We will get you an interpreter. If you're in the complaint room, we have hotlines that we call and we have an interpreter for media. That should not be a barrier to reporting. In the Bronx, we have right now one Asian hate crime case. It's not actually handled by my office. A piece of it will be handled. We're still investigating. We're working very closely with them. But that, because they were juveniles, handled by family court, which is another area that handles cases. But we work very closely. We also have an immigrant care, and they are there to help victims of immigrants to the victims of crime. They will help them with various services, whatever the services are. We have that unit that will go out and help them, and because we understand that that's a big need, certainly with Bronx County. When a case comes in, we will take right up in the complaint room. I will then assign it to a hate crimes prosecutor. These are people who specialize in prosecuting hate crimes, and they will handle it from the minute it comes into the complaint room until it goes to trial, or there's a plea, or it's a disposition, in whatever way we need to do that. So you can also, if you don't go to NYPD, I recommend that you do, because they really do know how to investigate. We do have a hotline, and we do have an immigration affairs unit, and you can call either one of those units, and we will take the case that way. But I think the best way, and what we would do then is then call NYPD. So I guess what I would recommend is that you call NYPD, but we have our hate crimes unit, we have a hotline, we have an number. But I would also recommend that if you're interested, the attorney's offices, I know in every county, would be more than happy to go in person when we're past the COVID-19 and speak to your community, because it's not something that you should be afraid of. But beyond that, if you have victims of crime and are not pressing charges for whatever reason, you have crime victims counseling. We have services that are available to help the victims of crime. And so I really want to impress upon those community leaders that you really have an obligation to help us, help your community by really encouraging us to report the crime. We all recognize, and I have two daughters who adopted in China. Prior to are made to them. It's not to the level of hate crime, but it's certainly offensive. So we know it's increasing, and it's, because of the pandemic, but hate crime, as our aim said, it's been around for a long time, and mentioned it's been around for a long time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on how we proceed with hate crime prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Chief Gottlieb. Next, we have our final speaker, who is from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, Chief Olivo. Chief Olivo, are you with us? I believe we're going to unmute you on the video chat.
The COVID is not Chinese.
Hello, Chief Olivo, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good, good. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jeannie Olivo, and
Mày không講
Chief Olivo,
Okay,
before
the
you go, I
damage is
just also
done.
want to say,
Okay, by
everyone,
our wonderful president.
if you are not speaking, would you please just kindly mute
You
yourself
play
as well?
sarcastic. Okay, 就話佢哋啲人。
are you there, Frank?
I am.
個個都唔蠢。
Yes. Chief Olivo?
Okay. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeannie Olivo. Again, I'm the chief of the hate crimes unit at the Manhattan DA's office. It's a unit that Cyrus Vance Jr., our district attorney, founded in 2009. And just very quickly, because I know that everyone wants to get to the questions, let me just tell you a little bit about our unit and how we function in the borough of Manhattan. Our unit consists of the unit chief, that's me. We have a deputy unit chief. We have a full-time analyst, a full-time investigator.
Chief Olivo, sorry for that. Someone got unmuted, so we just want to mute them. We don't want someone to be talking over you while you're speaking.
Okay.
Mute them just now, and then ask you to if you can continue. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Do you want me to start now or wait?
We're just finishing muting them.
Okay.
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 Yeah.
Great. So again, I'm the unit chief. We have a deputy unit chief, a full-time analyst assigned to our unit. We have a retired first-grade detective assigned who helps out, as well as an invaluable LGBT advisor and a resource coordinator. We also work very closely with our office's witness aid unit. It's called WASU, and WASU provides services to victims and witnesses, including social service referrals, counseling services. It's a great unit. It's been around forever, and it really, really supports our victims and our witnesses. We also work closely with a community partnership unit, which you may know about, and they are the bridge between our office and the community. They work with small businesses, schools, community-based organizations, and they basically connect our office to the community. So if there is a problem, we will get out there. We speak in schools, we speak at for other organizations, and we try to get the message out to report that, we can't do anything unless there's reporting. Now, unfortunately, I am sorry to say that Manhattan, I believe, is leading the boroughs as far as COVID-related anti-Asian cases. Our borough has three arrests that we are prosecuting. One was a violent arrest, and we are also investigating 3 other cases where no arrests have been made yet. But again, we don't have a crystal ball here, and I hope that I am very wrong, but I'm fearful that as long as COVID-19 is still front and center, that anti-Asian hate crime cases may also be with us for a while. And I want you to know that the NYPD works very hard. We work very hard. I think I can speak on behalf of my other colleagues, Kelly Muse and Michael Brovner and Terry Gottlieb and all the other DA's offices, that we work very hard on these cases and that we are there for you. But we can't work a case unless they're reported. So we really need to get the message out to the community to report. Obviously, if there's an emergency, you call 911. or you can go to your local precinct. You can go to the hate crimes task force at the NYPD. Inspector Molinari is there. All of those guys work so hard, and they're so well staffed, and they're so responsive to our needs and to the needs of New York City. And of course, we at the Manhattan DA's office also have a hotline that you can call if, you can call us anytime, but our number is 212-335-3100. Another thing that we do at the Manhattan DA's office is restorative justice. It's one of the sentencing alternatives that we use at the DA's office in Manhattan. It's kind of like a sit-down approach to resolving these matters. And, we don't use it obviously in all kinds of matters, but in some cases, we recognize that prison is not always the solution to the problem. So we actually, we will have mediators, and we sit down and we talk through the issues that are at the root of these horrible crimes. What else can I say here? I think that that's pretty much it. I think that Kelly did a good job of explaining what is and what isn't a hate crime. Again, we deal with crimes. There has to be a crime. We also have interpreters and translators in our office. So if someone feels like they need that, we will definitely make that available. And all I can say is it's just so important to report. And if anybody is not taken seriously, then you can call me personally, and I will make sure that your voice and your concerns are heard. So I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Chief Olivo. I want to also thank everyone for their patience. As we said before, we did hit our 1,000 capacity within minutes, and so that did make things a little more difficult. But I'm so happy that our speakers were able to join us. Earlier, we had on with us one of our co-sponsoring agencies, and for those who don't know, the agencies that work really hard to put this together to make sure that you can hear from the different speakers were, of course, the Commission on Human Rights, of course, the Mayor's Office for the Prevention of Hate Crimes, and of course, the Mayor's Community Affairs Unit. Commissioner Carry-On from the Community Affairs Unit unfortunately could not stay with us for the duration of the programming, but he definitely does send his regards. Likewise, Councilmember Koo, who was on earlier, is not able to stay for the duration. However, he did submit some questions, and the questions that Councilmember Koo submitted is, he said that, when can we expect seminars in other languages, and will these be promoted in different languages and translated? And the answer to that question is very soon. In May, we actually have different in-language workshops that we will be launching. We'll be launching them in Korean, in Mandarin, in Tagalog, in Japanese, as well as other languages as we continue to move forward. And so please look out for that. We will make sure that they're not only in-language town halls, but that they are also promoted to the communities that need them the most. And we will make sure that everyone is able, who wants to participate, is able to participate. Another question that the council member had is, he asked about the numbers. He saw that as it pertained to the city and what we're doing, he didn't believe that the numbers that we see that the city reports, both from the Commission on Human Rights and from the NYPD, accurately reflects what's happening in the community, in the Asian community. What the council member said is that the Asian media reports things daily that are going on. What is the administration doing to ensure that the community has the resources and information to report and respond to these bias incidents so that we can have the appropriate numbers? So I will direct that that question to both Commissioner Malayalis as well as Chief Harrison. Commissioner, I believe that you're still.
Yeah. So I think underreporting is an issue that probably all of our offices have to contend with, which is why I think almost all of the speakers who just spoke have been trying to drive home the idea that people really need to report. One of the things I say about our law is oftentimes considered one of the most protective anti-discrimination laws in the country. But if people aren't using it or don't know how to use it or where to report, it's meaningless. So folks have to actually know how to use it, and that they actually can report. I think that's also probably why from all of the offices, people have tried to identify the different ways that the offices are doing outreach, and are also doing outreach in other languages other than English. Reporting is so incredibly important. And, just speaking as an Asian American, I think that there are oftentimes questions that are asked as to whether or not Asian people actually experience racism. It's not shocking to me anymore, just being Asian American and having had this question come at me quite a bit. Is there any such thing as, racism against Asian Americans? The answer to that is obviously yes. All of our offices could attest to the fact that there are hate incidents and there are anti-Asian bias incidents or attacks even involving Asian American people. And I think the important reasons why it's important to report is not only because there are remedies that you can get in the civil legal system at the Commission on Human Rights, or there are ways that could be addressed in the criminal legal system, like with the hate crimes units that you've been hearing from. But also it's important to document that these issues are still a problem, so that even outside of a pandemic-related situation, that we as government, that we as communities can be addressing this through education and other means. So yeah, I think the underreporting issue is something that we all recognize, and why it's so important that we have forums like this so that people actually understand how they can report to us whether they are experiencing the discrimination or harassment or hate crime themselves, or they are witnessing it. So just as Deborah Louder was saying earlier, our offices also have been doing a lot of bystander intervention type trainings. So our office did about 5 of them in the last 5 weeks with the Center for Anti-Violence Education, and we're working with the Office to Prevent Hate Crimes and some of the other offices in order to put some bystander intervention trainings in other languages as well. But it's absolutely important that whether you are witnessing it, whether you are experiencing it, that you are reporting it to one of our agencies.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. Chief Harrison or Deputy Inspector Molinari, would you like to also answer the question about the reporting?
Yeah, so I'll just say a few brief words and I'll pass it over to Mark. But yeah, we have different forms and mechanisms of reporting any of these hate crimes. One we use the most is, of course, 911 to do promote, but we also have a Crime Stoppers tip hotline, which is 1-800-577-TIPS. So once again, if you happen to see something, any crime, but especially a hate crime, which we definitely have put on the top of our priority list and how we're investigating it, we need to know about it. And sometimes, unfortunately, people don't get involved. But if you see something, you have to let us know. Try to get the location. Try to get a description. Get that information to us so we can at least investigate it, so we can make sure we bring these individuals to justice. And I've been promoting it since the start of the pandemic. We need people to come forward. The reports that we have of the 13 incidents, unfortunately, I don't think captures all the incidents that have happened since we've gone through this pandemic. So we want people to come forward. We understand there's a concern of getting their identity out there. They want to kind of stay behind the scenes. That's why we always offer that Crime Stoppers tip. So we want to make sure people are willing to come forward. I'll pass it over to Mark to say something.
Thank you, Chief. Looking at it, there's the folks on this call, the agencies involved here. There's probably more levels, but we have to look at it as 3 levels. There's bias, which include offensive, protected free speech. No matter how offensive the statement is, if it doesn't involve a threat, it's not going to rise to a higher level. But then there are the bias-related incidents that involve housing discrimination or employment discrimination that our friends here at the Council for the Commission for Human Rights, they work on those incidents. But then when it's actually a crime, as many of the district attorney's offices say, then it comes to the office of the NYPD hate crime task force to investigate that crime. But our agencies, again, the district attorney's office, the NYPD hate crime task force, and the Commission on Human Rights are in constant communication. So if a person is called into the NYPD, is called to 911, and it does not raise the level of a hate crime, people from my office who communicate with the Commission on Human Rights frequently will work with them in getting the victim of this discrimination over to their office some assistance. As the chief said, we do 911 is the most important recording line. We need victims. We need witnesses to call 911. We see a lot of social media recording of incidents and then being pushed out to communities that way. It slows down the process, and then we work backwards to try to trace down the incident, where it was, who was affected, who might have witnessed it, and most importantly, the victim. So I encourage reporting all incidents, criminal incidents through 911. Police officer will respond, and NYPD takes hate crimes very, very seriously. It rises up the chain very quickly. The executive level of NYPD to make sure this is investigated properly, and then directly to my office. That's pretty much it.
Thank you so very much. Another question that we received, and this one comes from Jim Green. How do we handle disturbing hatred that we find online? We've seen them towards Asian Americans, African Americans, and others. And can online hate also be considered hate crimes? So in terms of how do we handle online hatred, I don't know if anyone from the one of the district attorney's offices would like to answer that.
If you want, it's Mark Molinare here. I don't know if they want to answer. If you want, I could jump in on that.
Oh yes, Deputy Inspector, please do.
Well, two different parts to it. There is online hatred. There are hate groups that put out information, or there are just those who show their bias and discrimination through postings and whatnot. Some of it is free speech. Some of it could be threatening and harassing. Back in September, the NYPD, under Commissioner Malayalis, started a unit within the Intelligence Bureau named REMI, Racially and Ethnically Motivated Extremists. That unit tracks some of these groups, but we are also bound by certain legal obligations that we can't just, the NYPD can't monitor individual civilians or groups unless they're suspected of a crime. But we also work very, very well between Hate Crime Task Force and that REMI unit to refer information back and forth on cases that we see if it comes to our attention, it should be going Intelligence Bureau REMI, and vice versa. If they see online hatred that may have the potential to escalate to a hate crime, they'll refer it over to our office.
This is Rodney Harris. If I could just jump in real quickly. You know, the police department, we're only as good as the public. We have to have a partnership. We have to work hand in hand. People have to give us information in order for us to investigate it. So we really ask people to be forthcoming and give us things that they see so we can investigate it. And yes, unfortunately, there is freedom of speech, and people do utilize that amendment to talk about hatred. But there's also a very, very thin line there as well, and sometimes the line is crossed. And when it is, it's important that it's brought to our attention so we can investigate it thoroughly and make sure that it's addressed and people are held accountable.
Frank, this is Deborah, if I could pitch in as well.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so hi, it's Deborah from the Office for the Prevention of Hate Crime. So I think this whole issue of hate on the internet is probably one of the most disturbing trends we've seen in the world of hate today. These are not free speech issues. The platforms that carry, you know, whether it's Facebook, Google, YouTube, these are private companies who have the right and the responsibility to regulate what is and is not on their platforms. These companies have instituted best practices, and they have terms of service for people to be using their platforms. And the best thing to do is to use their reporting mechanisms. They're pretty easy to do on their website to report the offensive content. And they will let you know how quickly the offensive content will be taken down. But this has to be a a piece that anybody on this call, anybody in society today must be sort of proactive in pushing back against the hate online. I saw in the chat a number of questions about the preventative nature. This is one of those things we can do to prevent. I want to stress again that no one's born hating, right? Hate is learned and it can be unlearned. And to the extent that we need to particularly emphasize programs for kids, to teach them skills, to push back against bullying, there are skills that can create empathy. And we are very committed to working with Department of Education. They have the Respect for All program today that focuses on the social emotional learning of kids. I think those kinds of programs need to be ramped up. Hate, unfortunately, in the internet and what we're seeing in these incidents on the street, it's become normalized. I like to say this, the lid has come off the sewer. We can explore it in other venues why that has happened, but I think those of us know exactly, words matter. And when you have elected officials from the top who enable hate, it spreads like a virus. And so that's why this office and working with all these agencies, we believe is so important, because we believe long-term we can make a difference. I will tell you, when I've worked in some of the high schools and high school kids have told me, like, we're required to learn math and science and English, but we're not required to learn how to get along with each other. And they're asking for these kinds of skills. And then another kid said to me, yeah, and that's fine. And what are you doing about our parents? Because we may learn these things and we get home and we're hearing it from parents. So to the extent we are working with these organizations like the Center for Anti-Violence Education to provide training on how do you become somebody who stands up to hate. All of us have to be partners in that fight. You can't rely on city agencies to do it. We can spur it and we can create programs to inspire all of you. But this is going to take a lot of hard work from all of us if we care about democracy, if we care about New York maintaining its character as a welcoming, inclusive place for all.
I'll just also add briefly that, the Commission on Human Rights also does a lot of workshops and trainings within different schools. We work with DOE as well. We have a workshop that we do on cyberbullying, whereas a lot of forms of online hate or cyberbullying wouldn't necessarily fall within our law for purposes of, identifying a violation of our law. There's a lot of ways in which we work with community to address some of the issues that Deborah was just talking about. So if folks are interested, they should absolutely contact us. They could contact us on our training page on our website, and we'd be happy to do a workshop.
Thank you for that. A question we had when Deputy Molinari and Chief Harrison were speaking about the online hate and talking about the REMI initiative, someone asked, so what is considered crossing the line when it comes to hate online? If there could be specific examples that are given, and also how do you report when you see perhaps an online hate group being created?
Do you want me to answer this? This is Jeannie Olivo from Manhattan.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. Yes. So if you see something online, and if there's a threat and they're threatening, and it's, we have a case right now where there were threats made online, you call your local precinct, you call the hate crimes task force, you can call the DA's offices in the borough that you're in, but that would constitute a hate crime if there's a threat involved, for sure.
Awesome, thank you. And I don't know, Chief Molinari, since you spoke about the REMI initiative, is there a way to alert people as well?
Jeannie, the best answer to that, really getting in touch with a specific unit in the NYPD has to start from a call into 911 for an interaction with the line officer, police officers who would take the report and refer the case to whichever unit should handle it. And as I said, it's between hate crime task force and REMI, we're in constant touch with each other on which way a case should go. As Jeannie said, an online posting of some sort could rise to the level of hate crime. It could be biased. It could be discriminatory. It could be First Amendment speech of just denouncing or announcing your disapproval or dislike of a group. But once it rises to the level of a threat against that group, then it could be called into law enforcement anywhere and handled appropriately from there.
Are there any other examples that you can share just for folks? What that would look like?
Examples of online activity?
Online hate that where your office would intervene.
I'm sure there's many examples of it. With that, we would intervene.
Yeah.
It would have to involve it. If somebody posts something, we did have one. There's an example that was in the media a couple weeks ago where somebody posted that tomorrow we're coming down to Chinatown and we're going to kill everybody. Something of the nature of that. I'm not sure the exact wording, but that is something that came to my office, and we worked with the Intelligence Bureau's REMI unit, and they still have the case on that. So that is something that was seen online and sent into NYPD and got into the Intelligence Bureau.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Another question that we received, someone said, what is the plan post-pandemic to ensure that we are still combating hate? Because when the stay-at-home orders are over, there will likely be an increase in some of these incidents. So can each of the representatives speak to that? What is your particular office doing, and how are they strategizing for a post-pandemic response to stigma, bias, and hate?
And so from the Office for the Prevention of Hate Crime, all the work we're doing right now is with the thought of it being long-term. So I mentioned earlier, the education resource guide that we put together, and it will be, for us, it will be working within the system with educators to ensure that they have the training that's necessary to do anti-bias training with their students. There is a hunger for it. I think this has been a real wake-up call for people, and educators are telling us, students are telling us they want this kind of training. So the other is, when I said at the beginning, there's not one way to fight the hate, right? We're doing it, and you heard today a fantastic presentation from law enforcement, particularly, which is the reactive part. But in addition to the education piece, it's also community relations. We have to invest in really getting people talking to each other, breaking down stereotypes, addressing bigotry, being there for the other, and really being supportive. Sometimes in the past when there's been hate crimes, we'll have rallies and you get the elected officials and community leaders to stand up. We can't do that right now, but we can put the systems in place to ensure that people will stand up for their neighbors. So this is going to be incredible. We're very committed to this, to programs, to engaging kids and their voices in this kind of fight against hate. I think, just having this program today, I often say I hope people don't take for granted how seriously we're taking this issue as a city. This doesn't happen everywhere in this country. It doesn't happen everywhere in the world. What you're seeing here today, I think, is pretty unique, and we're very proud of the work. We have very hardworking staffs. But as I said, this is a fight for all of us. We can't do it for you. We have to engage people with us. So it's going to be long after the pandemic. We will be still dealing with this issue, but we can make a difference.
Thank you. Yes.
Real quickly talk about if there are any issues, and if we do happen to see some type of spike when it comes to any type of hate crime. Mark Molinari has 19 investigators inside of his hate crime task force. I have 6,000 investigators that are assigned to the Detective Bureau. We have to deploy more people within this task force than we'll do as such. Also, it comes down to training the patrol officers. As the chief of patrol, one of the things that I've always done was make sure that any trending crime that we had going on, that the patrol officers were well aware of exactly what was going on, and that will continue under Force Patrol. So, between the Detective Bureau, between patrol, between the Intelligence Bureau, making sure that everybody's trained, making sure everybody's aware of the surroundings, making sure that we have enough manpower to investigate any of these crimes. We'll do as such if it becomes such an issue.
If I may, it's Mark Molinari Terry, just to jump in on what the chief said, looking at pre-COVID days, because the first couple months of 2020, we were actually down 20% in hate crimes before the COVID crisis started. And as of now, we're down over 30% in hate crimes. We know that in the last 6 weeks, because of the COVID situation, those numbers are skewed. So we anticipate there could be an increase after this. But I think it's important to note, and I think every agency on this call could agree with me and reiterate it. What we're doing on this conference call right now, we've been doing for a few years now. Working with the Commission for Human Rights, we've done cross-training between my unit and theirs, where we train the agency. Working with hate crime, we've done presentations for different community groups and with all the DA's offices. So we've been working with the community to get them out there, the prevention and the education and the community, and then of course the investigation. We've been doing this for a while. So after the COVID crisis, we're going to continue doing that same work, and we're going to try to strive to do it better and better every day.
Thank you. I don't know if any of the other speakers want to answer the question about what your office is doing to think about post-pandemic.
I'll jump in. It's Jeannie Olivo again. I mean, we've been exactly like we've been going to the schools all throughout the years. We do hate crimes presentations to high school students, even to junior high school students, through community partnerships. We do a lot of presentations to community-based groups and community organizations. I know we go to small businesses and do it. You know, whenever there's a request or a need, like we're there. I mean, and there's such great communication. I really need to stress that between the NYPD and really all of the DA's offices. Before this meeting, I spoke to my colleagues, you know, Kelly and Teresa and Michael and the other DA's offices, and we were all commenting about there's just such an exchange of information. Like we're always talking to each other about ways to improve and ways to just really combat, you know, hate crimes. And so we really are on it, and it's a good thing. We work well together.
Yes, and Brooklyn, we've been going to schools, we go to churches, we go to synagogues, we go to, you know, community groups, all types of organizations on a regular basis. So it's very important to us that, you know, we not only have the investigatory and the prosecution side of everything, but that we also have the education component as well. That's very important.
I believe Terry Gottlieb from the Bronx. Also, yes.
And I was going to say that's exactly the same thing. I mean, we all go out there, and you believe that the best way to combat hate crime is by preventing it. And the way to do that is to get to the children because that's where you learn hate, unlearn hate before it's learned. That's a great thing. And the Bronx, and I know all of you. And I think we do it as a three-prong. We do both as education to the victims so that they know that they hated, they can come in, they can talk to us, and that we were there to help them. And if we don't end up making a case, we will be able to help them. I'm sorry to all the VA. All you need to do is call any. And if you call the wrong office, they will refer you to the right office. So the office will be there. Because it's a problem, and the VA's office is on this. We're so here, but anywhere that you need us.
And this is Michael Brockner in Queens. We also do, just like the other offices, we reach out, and we've had the last, I think, 3 years, we've had a conference or a town hall meeting at the Borough Hall focused specifically on hate crimes and bridging the gap.
Thank you. Commissioner Malayalis?
Sure, I'm just going to add, of course, the Commission on Human Rights, our folks are constantly out in different communities doing programming and also bringing people in for roundtable discussions to get direct input from communities as to how we could best reach them, provide them resources. And when I say resources, not just the resources of the Commission on Human Rights, but programs like this that also help people reach other areas of the city that they need to reach. In fact, today's program is a direct result of input we received from some of those roundtable discussions where folks said, you know what, we really need something that lays out very clearly what's the difference between reporting discrimination claims to your office versus going to NYPD and then working with the different DA's offices. So I want folks to understand that when we receive input from you, we work on that. It manifests into actual programming just like this. So to the extent that people have other suggestions on how we should be more effectively reaching people or what that programming should look like, please, again, reach out to the Commission on Human Rights. Real things happen because people give us suggestions and input, just like today's program.
I'd like to say thank you for all our speakers, our panelists. It's 4:32 p.m. I know there were a plethora of questions still remaining. We were able to we will respond to people individually and answer those questions that were not yet answered. I also wanted to remind everybody that we will have more of these reporting town halls. It's very important that we get the message out. We also know that there were hundreds of people who have been emailing and calling us since we've been on because they weren't able to get on due to capacity. And those are things that we'll make sure that we are working with different communities and different community groups to ensure that message gets across. The one thing we all want to really emphasize is please call 311 and say human rights or call 911. It's important to report. As you report, all of our agencies, all of our offices do work together, and we will connect you to the appropriate entity if it's something that our office does not, handle firsthand. But please report. We are here. We are working collaboratively, and we appreciate you all for joining us, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And so we will send you more information of the next virtual reporting town halls that will be coming very soon. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Our panelists again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Be safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
This is Doreen Bermudez. I'm going to close the meeting now. Thank you.